In my last video, I mentioned that the life domain clerics were kind of like the Boy Scouts. And by that logic, that means the light domain clerics, what we're talking about today, are the teacher's pets. Hey fellow game masters, I'm Richard Quiner and welcome back to the RPG Daily, your daily dose of all things tabletop role-playing games, helping you build your world and master your game. And today we're talking about the light domain, which sounds a lot like the life domain, and since I just shot the life domain video, I'm gonna hope that I don't keep saying life instead of light. That being said, remember in the comments below to let me know what you think of this divine domain, so we can compare it to the others a little later on. So what is the light divine domain? The light domain kind of represents all things that light can be related to. We're talking about renewal and rebirth and beauty and truth and the morning and that kind of stuff that just feels fresh and good and happy in the world. These are dealing with the deities that oversee all the things that kind of encompasses, all the light, but they can also pierce the darkness and bring, light to that darkness. Lathander and Helm are probably the most notable deities of light, and I mentioned they do also cross over into life, but they are some notable deities. You'll also find the clerics tend to be obsessed with fire. There's a lot of fire going on in this light domain. So, how does this light domain actually work? First off, of course, all clerics get some spells at varying levels as they are progressing through their adventure. For level 1 of the light domain, you're getting 2 spells that have to do with fire, kind of. You're getting Burning Hands and Fairy Fire. Neither of them are standard cleric spells. Burning Hands is kind of a sad little spell. It's basically just a cone of fire that shoots out of your hands. Nothing too exciting there. But Fairy Fire, however, is kind of cool. Fairy Fire allows you to cast the spell in a 20-foot cube, and any creature in that 20-foot cube has to make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail that dex save, they are outlined in a ring of fire that could be any color you want, because that's the creative part of this. But that fire, it's not actual burning fire, it doesn't do real damage to them. What it does do is give any attacks against that creature get advantage. So essentially you get to cast advantage on all these creatures and everyone will have advantage attacking them for the duration of the spell. So you have to also keep a concentration spell up in this case to keep it active. At level 3, you get Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray, and again, neither of these are standard cleric spells. They are not from the cleric list. The Scorching Ray gives you a chance to shoot 3 rays, so I'm imagining a straight line of fire at targets in the distance, each of them doing 2d6 fire damage. Essentially, this sounds to me like it's a little more potent firebolt. You get to cast it 3 times. You have the potential for more damage with each fireball, fire ray you cast. So it's a pretty straightforward spell. At level 5, you're getting Daylight and Fireball. Fireball it's kind of a meme at this point. Everyone knows about the wizards casting fireballs in small locations because everyone has to make a dex saving throw. And if they fail the dex saving throw, they take a lot of damage. And that damage only increases at the higher spell levels that you cast Fireball at. Daylight, however, is a cleric spell that just creates a massive amount of light. Like its name, Daylight. It's very bright for a large space. At level 7, you get Guardian of Faith and Wall of Fire. And if you need any little explanation on Guardian of Faith, you can watch the Life Cleric video. I talk a little bit about them there. But the Wall of Fire is essentially that. It's a long wall of fire. They can be 60 feet long by 20 feet high, or it can be a 20-foot diameter circle. But the wall is also about a foot wide. Of course, any creature that is in this wall of fire when it appears is going to take damage, but also any creature that approaches within 10 feet of one of the sides, which you as the player get to choose which is the damaging side. This means your party can actually get right up against this wall of fire, and the enemies can't get you because they'll just be taking damage coming closer. At level 9, you get Flame Strike and Scrying. Scrying we've talked about before. It is spying on someone somewhere in the world. As long as you know them, you can scry on them. But Flame Strike is kind of a holy flaming column of vengeance that you kind of cast on your enemies. It is a 10-foot radius by 40-foot tall cylinder of fire that appears in a certain location. Any creatures caught inside it have to make a dex saving throw, or they take 46 fire damage and 46 radiant damage. And of course, like all the good spells, that damage gets higher the higher level spell that you cast it as. So you can see by looking at all these spells, there's a theme here. fire and light go well together, and that's how they want it. Cool. Now let's get into the features of this divine domain. At level 1, you get a bonus cantrip. What is that cantrip? It's light. You can cast light on something. That's all you get for that one. Also at level 1, though, you get the ability Warding Flare. Warding Flare is really cool and should be used a lot. Just in general, should be used a lot. It's essentially like shining a laser pointer in someone's eyes when they're trying to attack you. What this means, if there's a creature that's within 30 feet of you that you can see, and they attack you, as a reaction, you can give them disadvantage on that attack. It's kind of like flashing them with a light, or throwing a flashbang into a room, that kind of thing. It's a reaction, though, so you only get to use it once per round of combat. And you do have limited amounts of time that you can use this. The quantity of times you can use this in a day is equal to your Wisdom ability score modifier. So the higher your ability score, and the higher your modifier, the more times you can use Warding Flare in a day. At level 2, you get your channel divinity called Radiance of the Dawn, not to be confused with Gears of War Hammer of Dawn. They work totally differently, I found out. Essentially, you present your holy symbol with your Radiance of Dawn, and it banishes any magical darkness in an area, and any creature caught in the light of your Radiance of Dawn takes damage if they fail a saving throw. So it's kind of, if you want to picture this, it's kind of like when Gandalf is riding on the field outside of Minas Tirith, and he's going to save the dudes, and he holds up his staff, and it's just a big bunch of light comes out, and it scares the Nazgul away. And then the riders who are coming back from Osgiliath are able to survive thanks to Gandalf. That's Radiance of the Dawn. At level 6, you get the awesome ability, Improved Warding Flare. So remember Warding Flare from level 1, that you get to shine a laser pointer into your enemy's eyes when they attack you. Now it's even better, because if the enemy is within 30 feet of you and they are attacking someone, an ally, also within 30 feet, you can use your reaction to cause disadvantage on that attack. So it's not just a self-defense, but it is a party defensive maneuver, and you can just be giving disadvantage left and right to enemies attacking your friends. I want you all to remember this, because you can use it up to 5 times depending on your ability modifier. You can use this quite a bit, so if you have people who are getting hit a lot, use your Warding Flare. Use your Improved Warding Flare if you are high enough level. At level 8, you get the ability Potent Spellcasting. This one is pretty simple. Whenever you cast a Cleric cantrip to cause damage, you get to add your Wisdom ability modifier to that damage. So it just ups the damage of cantrips just a little bit more. At level 17, you get the ability Corona of Light. What this is as an action, you can turn into just a big beacon of bright light in the middle of the room. The bright light extends 60 feet out from radius from all sides of you, and any creatures within that 60-foot radius of you get disadvantage on saving throws versus spells that cause radiant or fire damage. So this is great if you're in a party that has a lot of fire damage, or if you're in an area that needs a lot of fire damage. You can cast this Corona of Light, get a big broad beam, and everyone has disadvantage on their saving throws, and then you start throwing fireballs at people left and right. It's a pretty good tactic in my opinion. Thinking about the Light Cleric and these feats, and how this is a type you do want to be in the middle of it. You are dealing with fire, you're dealing with a lot of that, so I wanted to think of some feats that could help. I did think about Warcaster, which I've used before. It does give you some pretty good, abilities in the midst of combat, meaning, if an enemy is moving away from you and you get an opportunity attack against it, instead of hitting it with a melee attack, you can actually use a cantrip, or a spell, I should say. That is really useful in this case, especially with the Potent Spellcasting allowing you to add your Wisdom modifier to a cantrip. You can just sling that and hit them. The Spell Sniper for Clerics is also pretty good with this. With fire, some of these are ranged attacks, such as Scorching Ray is a ranged attack where you roll to see if you hit the target. That kind of spell with Spell Sniper means that the distance of that attack is doubled, which is pretty good. It also ignores halves and 3/4 cover if you're using cover in your game, and it allows you to learn a couple more cantrips that you can just have in your pocket. I did notice about this, it's a lot of fire, it's a lot of damage, and it's not really designed as a healing. It might be your primary healer. It does have some good healing spells, but it could also be very potent as a crowd control kind of caster. Wall of fire, ringing in enemies into a certain area, keeping people where you want them. if you were to pick spells that lean into that a little bit, you could just control the battlefield from a distance, and people wouldn't be able to mess with you, and your party would just be able to cut everyone down pretty easily, I think. I would say, highly recommend, if you're playing this light domain cleric, try to think tactically. In that case, try to think of how to use your fire damage most effectively as you're throwing it out in the crowds. It could be pretty fun, and thematically, fire is also very fun to play, so there's that. Anyways, I hope you like this rundown of the light cleric. I've been Richard. Thanks for watching.